So hi everyone and welcome to the third episode of Gamedev Insights, a space in which we host game dev folks to discuss their work and experiences in the games industry. I am Ljubica. I'm a senior recruiter here at 8bit. And today I'm really excited to host Bartosz Rakowski, a senior game designer with over 8 years of experience. Bartosz, welcome to Game Dev Insights. We're super happy to have you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you. Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
awesome.
pleasure.
So Bartosz, what sparked your interest in the video games industry?
So I was privileged to receive a PC at a very young age. I was free at the time. It was IBM 386, and it was loaded with plenty of games. So yeah, I was really into it. I think I was playing them probably too much for my age, but yeah, like my parents weren't discouraging me from it, so it was really nice. And so yeah, that sparked my initial interest, but I was not actually focused on making the games. I was not even thinking about the possibility. It was, for me, it was like, very technical stuff only reserved for programmers. But then when I was a little bit older, I I received a cover disc at some of the Polish magazines, and it has Games Factory program on it, and it is a really simple tool. Actually, it was developed further through the 90s, and now it's called Click Team Fusion. Then in the 90s was Games Factory, and I was actually taking templates from the game. I was still too stupid to actually create something from grounds up, so I was altering the existing templates, and then I was thinking, okay, maybe it's kind of possible. And then when I was older, there was a RPG Maker software, and it was actually really cool because it didn't require any technical knowledge. And I was ripping like sprites from like Dragon Ball games. I remember doing some, small games, and then I was kind of satisfied with the outcomes. I was not 100% sure that I'm gonna make games myself, but then I wanted to be a part of the whole community, so I was editor for like video game websites, writing news, reviews. uh, I was part on the ROM hacking scene on Nintendo DS, where we were translating games into Polish. Unfortunately, nothing came out of it, but I was really happy to be a part of the whole community, video game community. And then actually, as the only skill I had at that time was just, I liked games and I had like good English, because my parents were kind of facilitating it from the very young age to go to classes outside of the school. There was a university English philology with some game design courses, and that's how I started. And then I learned Unreal 3, and it kind of rolled from there. So like at that point I knew, okay, I'm gonna make games, and I don't need to be a programmer to achieve that. So yeah.
So how has your education helped you as a game designer? And what advice would you give, to somebody, to people who want to become game designers? Like what type of education should they pursue?
Yeah. So I think that at this point I'm not familiar with current game design courses, whether they're good or not. I can only base on my experience, right? But I personally wouldn't advise for pursuing higher education in game design. I think this is something you can learn on your own, and it really boils down to like there's some game design theory to learn, but you need to learn the tools. I think that's very important thing. And doing it on your own, you can always be up to date with the current trends, with the current engine versions and whatnot. So I think that's important, but I still think one should pursue higher education. But uh, maybe something that you're really passionate about. So whether it's like, I know people working in the game industry that are psychologists, philologists like me, or pursue like different career path, biologists, and this may actually help your work because for example, writing thesis is a perfect preparation for making research when you are doing the game. uh, Writing papers is a perfect way of articulating your thoughts and ideas, and it will also help you create better game design documents. So pursue the higher education that you're really passionate about. Learn game design stuff as well, and you're gonna be in a good path to actually you know achieving something and being enrolled when you finish some projects, whether they are game jams or something, something small, you're gonna be good.
That's awesome. That sounds really good. Okay, so talking to a lot of like people that still haven't joined the industry, of course, like they have painted a picture of what of what it's like, like to work at a games company. So for you, like so I imagine that you had like some ideas, how it's how your work is going to look like before you join your first studio. So like what were like I would say like the main surprises or like the biggest lessons that you've learned?
um yeah, like especially for smaller studios, uh, as a game designer, you need to be prepared that you're gonna do a lot of stuff. Like the smaller the team, the more things you have to do as a designer. So probably at that point I wasn't as prepared to do like so much like technical stuff. And one of my first project was actually a flight simulator on mobile. But it required plenty of like, yeah, technical knowledge, researching stuff. It's also very important, and I didn't know about it. Like the research is so important, like researching airplanes, how they work. So that was kind of different to my expectations. And probably I think that's I don't think that probably people still think that's the case, but designers are not like idea people. They are not coming to game and they're not providing ideas for the company to implement stuff. Like game designer is mostly solving problems that that just occur during the development. So yeah, that's the most important difference. I think that game designers are not idea people.
Okay, yeah, that sounds a bit harsh, honestly.
Yeah, like yeah, it does, but I think that's what's interesting about this job. Like I don't like I think like coming up with stuff is in the long run I think it can be boring. There's so much you can actually uh, think of. I think you need to get your hands dirty at some point.
Hmm.
So yeah.
So Bartosz, what do you actually like do to keep your skills sharp? Like to stay to stay competitive like on the market. Like up and knowledgeable about like what's happening. So you mentioned the importance of like doing your research, learning lots of technical stuff. So beyond that, what is it that you do to stay good in your line of work, 8 years later?
Mm. Yeah, I think for a designer, of course, the most important thing is to play games. So, like, if you're a designer and you're not enjoying playing games, I think it's gonna be a, a tough moment in your life. So, I think, yeah, playing games is very important, but not just playing them. Actually, you need to, like, approach them knowledgeably. So, you need to actually analyze them. Like I myself, and I think it's a very good approach, is to have a some sort of journal. So I have my game design journal, and I usually write stuff about games, and they're not like reviews, but they are kind of like design things that I liked about the game. Very often the things I didn't like about the game, how I can solve the problem. Like the game is, maybe not good enough in some like design, thingy, and how to make it better. And I think it's very important. Like every game you play, you then have to finish it. Uh, it's very important to actually analyze them and just um, divide them into small little pieces you can analyze. The other thing that kind of facilitates, this process is having some sort of subscriptions. Like hopefully company pays for it. So Game Pass, the PlayStation one. I think it's really nice that you have like huge library of games and you can play them on demand. So I think that's a nice thing to have, and also to not be so game centered. It's really nice to take inspiration from other media, uh, and just get interest in the things around the game. So like let's say your game as is revolving around sword combat. It maybe research some people that do like medieval reconstructions or teach how to fight with the sword. Uh, and yeah, uh, like I really like personally like those kind of comic book albums. That like the best example. It's actually only released in Poland and France at this moment, to my knowledge, is Metahourlon, which is kind of like a really nicely released comic book album with lots of artists, interesting articles, but there are kind of like plenty of short forms. So you have plenty of inspirations, like especially if you like sci-fi, it's a really good thing to actually. It's kind of like Love, Death and Robots, like this Netflix series, but kind of in a comic book form. So that's a really nice thing. So yeah.
Awesome. Can you name like any other, graphic novels, like TV shows, or games that that are maybe like your go-to source for inspiration?
Um, I think it should be done per project basis. Like if we focus on our work, like it's really nice to pursue the thing that you actually like, but I think it should be done on project basis. Like for me, it was really convenient because my my previous project, Roller Drome, was heavily influenced by French comic book artists, especially Mobius. And I love this stuff, so it was a pleasure actually reading Incal once again and enjoying that. So maybe that's another advice, like if you're really passionate about something around your game, so like it has an IP that you really like, yeah, I think it would be very valuable for you and the team to actually dive into the project, because then like you can draw inspirations from the thing that you really really like, and that's a win-win, right? So yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So now that you mentioned you're like an artist that whose work you are like so very very fond of, are there like any designers maybe whose work you are inspired by?
Mm, yeah, I think I'm still gonna go into like this French territory. By the way, I even wrote a bachelor's degree thesis on French game dev, so I'm really into it. But like my favorite game designer, I think, is Eric Chahi, the man who made Another World and Heart of Darkness. And I think they are like like especially Another World, they are not only like pieces of art, they are very well designed games and kind of a very nice blend between like really good action game and like cinematic experience. So yeah, like he's the best for me.
Okay, but like what is it about like the French games industry that that piqued your interest?
um that's
What,
yeah.
how is it different, like to UK, to Northern
like
America, like to any other market?
I kind of like the, like European stuff has a different vibe. It's like I don't want to be go into like stereotypes or like cliches, but uh, especially French games are kind of artsy and experimental in a way. That's why I like them so much. And they are really, like, French are really into their own pop culture. So like plenty of games from other European countries are really westernized. So they really like go into the American market, and they are, kind of, they don't have their own like national identity. And French games, and I mean the old French games especially, they had their own like identity. They draw from the French comic books. Uh so yeah, that's what makes them interesting for me. So yeah.
Okay, okay, cool. Um, so while you were explaining, like what a game designer does, like solving problems, doing lots of research, and like lots of analyzing, it sounds like a really like a lonely job. So I was wondering, like, do you maybe have like any like any like online community of game designers, like with which you bounce your ideas off, or clash your ideas, or simply just like validate whether like you're in on the right path?
Yeah. So like I wouldn't say a game designer's job is kind of lonely. It may be sometimes when the team is small and probably like you're one of the few designers in the team. Uh, but there are some, like especially like in Warsaw, there are like initiatives like getting people together, like designers talking about stuff. So that's cool. But for example, my company organizes a like meetings in the design department, and it doesn't matter which project you're on. We come together, we discuss our own stuff, we watch GDC talks, we talk about them. So I think it's kind of the employer responsibility to gather and leads, of course, to gather designers together and just make them exchange thoughts and ideas, because it's gonna contribute to the games better. So yeah.
You said that at first you joined a smaller mobile game studio and that you were working as a generalist. Today you're working at a much bigger studio, and as you said, you're focused on combat and system design. So how did how exactly did this transition happen?
Mhm.
How did you actually find your area of game design that you are comfortable with?
Yeah. So like from the beginning, I was kind of really into combat design, but reality is different, and like actually, I don't think it will be possible for a person just getting into in industry to have to be in the perfect position like from the get go. I think it's, yeah, it may not happen. So you need to be prepared to prepare few steps in your career to reach that goal. So like I wanted to be a game designer. So let's start with you being a game designer. Just pick a studio, like ideally the one you really like, and then start from there. And then just finish a project and pursue other studios. I think that's the better, that's the best way. So like for me, I was I started in the game company that was in the city that I lived. I was also studying at the same time. That was comfortable for me, so it was like a match made in heaven. And then I finished few projects there. And like to be like combat position, I know I need to make a work in a studio that makes games with combat. So that's why I joined People Can Fly, and I was working there. and I was kind of doing stuff around combat, but it was more system design, more focus around the player. But having finished a shooter, a triple A shooter, now this opened possibilities for other roles. So yeah, role 7 was looking for a combat guy, and as I was really passionate and I finished a shooter, I had like enough knowledge and skills to actually pursue that role. So that's why I'm here. Yeah, in role 7, and I like it very much. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Glad to hear that. Um, so your advice is like maybe like to start broad and then to actually find your niche.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like in combat design, which is not every game has a combat, so it's kind of like a niche position. So yeah, I think that's the best. Like don't start looking for the exact specialty. It needs to be acquired with time. So yeah.
My question now is, are you noticing any trends that are driving the development of PC and console games today?
Mm,
Are there like like any rules that people are now following, or like something that they are like sure are using like as a pattern for success? Like how do you see like the PC console market at this moment?
like especially in like indie market, it's really hard to kind of be very unique, and that's why marketing is so important, right? Like probably hundreds of games are released each day, so how can you compete with that? And probably most of them are probably of good quality, and some of them are probably brilliant, but they're gonna disappear in the amount of stuff that's releasing. And that's problematic. That's why people kind of want to work with algorithms, and like on TikTok or other social media. And for example, the Vampire Survivors game was really popular, and it just spurred amounts of clones because you just I like this game, and it's similar hashtags or whatever, and I can just use this tide to actually promote my stuff. So that's kind of the viralness of some of the releases. This is kind of like a trend that I can see. There are like trends that I really don't like as a game designer, and they come from monetization. So the idea of battle passes, yeah, I know it makes the games are free in the end, so maybe that's like an advantage, but sometimes the monetization is really brutal. So yeah, these are the like trends that kind of, but there are plenty. The video game market is so broad, and there are like so many niches you can actually incorporate into your own game. It's a really hard question, but yeah, there are plenty of niches, and yeah. And there's like the other thing that you actually currently, as the like gamer demography is so wide, and like from a very young to old age, and there are like mobile game players, you actually compete with everything currently, and everything is so accessible. So like video games don't compete with video games anymore. They compete with Netflix. They compete with like on other on demand services. So yeah, game dev's hard, yeah. But I think the marketing folks has the toughest time currently. Yeah.
Okay, and because you are working on, on premium games, how do you actually test your game designs? Like, if they work, if they don't work,
Yeah. This
if
is,
the players are gonna like it, how do you then like incorporate that feedback like into your process?
yeah, it all boils down to the budget, really. So yeah, like first of all, you can start with like the lowest budget version. So you actually let your friends play your game, invite them, and in the times of remote work, it's kind of easier. So yeah, like even my girlfriend has signed NDA, and I can ask her for an advice and just test out new stuff. So that's a really good thing. But like when you have more money, of course, then focus tests are really important. Like ideally with different probe of different demography, and you need to do them very often to test out whether your game design works. And I think that's the most important thing. Some people utilize early access, right? So that allows them to actually, you know, like to put it cynically, it kind of create a free beta testers of your game. But on the other hand, you have a community that kind of revolves around your game. They can see your progress. So yeah, that's a huge advantage. So the most important thing are playtests, and the more data you can withdraw, the better. So while doing roller drone, we had eye tracking, so we can actually see where the player's looking while playing the game. Very important, because like looking from the combat stuff, if like player if I see the player is looking at the enemy and I can see that she or he doesn't know where the enemy is, that's a kind of failure on the like enemy design, enemy placement, maybe art style. So the more data you can withdraw, the better, and the more playtest you can actually pay for, the better. So it all boils down to budget. And
Okay, so regarding now, like the player feedback, um, have you ever worked like on a project that received like really bad reviews, and how do you actually deal with that, like as a game designer?
um, actually,
Actually,
I was lucky enough to work on a game that had at least average to good response from the players. I don't remember someone being super negative. Maybe like it's singular persona, but you need to be prepared that like not everybody is gonna like your game. Maybe AAA games are more privileged in that matter, but like especially making indie game with like specific mechanics, no one will. You can be sure that everyone will dig it. So. Uh, but you need to be like, if the feedback's negative, it's still feedback, it's still information, it's still data. So you shouldn't be discouraged. It's gonna make your game play better. So yeah.
so what's the best piece of feedback that you have received so far?
uh yeah, like from from top of my mind, I think the best feedback I received is actually because people in their feedback, they sometimes tend to provide solutions, and that's not what we are looking at. Like probably when you're working on a game, you have plenty of solutions in your head, but you need to pinpoint the problem. So like I remember someone was really descriptive, like for example the certain moment was very hard, but they explained why it was different for them, and what explicitly was different, was difficult about this. Like in this case, it was like an encounter, and it really helped. There was also like some of the people playing action games, they tend to suffer from dizziness, like like vertigo problems. So yeah, like this feedback is really like, if you see like bigger amount of people complaining about this, then you can actually do something in your game to minimize that and redo the tests. So yeah, that's also a very valuable feedback, because if people are gonna be sick playing your game, you're gonna have a tough time. Yeah.
Okay, okay, cool. That's yeah, that's really good advice. Um, so um, I'm not actually like sure if you can answer this. If you cannot, it's perfectly fine. But I wanted to ask you, like, what's your favorite project, or like, or game title that you have worked on so far? and what actually made it fun for you?
Um, yeah, so probably it's gonna be my latest project, which is Roller Drome, and I think, yeah, like for me, it was much made in heaven because French comic book aesthetic, uh, combat loop, which is kinda Doom-esque, and the combat philosophy that's really close to Doom and that kind of shooters. So like it, all checkboxes were ticked for me when I look at and I loved it, and I kind of like arcade sports games as well, and the game features main hero riding on roller skates. So yeah, that's my favorite project so far.
Okay, okay, awesome. And what is your dream project?
Mm, uh, that's a difficult question. Yeah. So I think like evaluating the dream project can occur um actually after the release. It's a strange way of answering that, but like after you release the game and it's in the final shape, I can actually say that okay, that was my dream project, because like game development has ups and downs. So then probably when it's released, I can actually say, so yeah, that was the best project I've worked on, because the process is very important. And then when you can read on Reddit that someone loved your game, and in the best scenario, like it changed their life. So I think that's very important when the something stays with the player. So they finish the game, and something stays with them after they're playing it. Like that's yeah, that's the greatest gratification a game designer can have, personally. So yeah.
So, are there any games that you have played recently that you feel have, like changed your life, like, or, or made like a really, really big impact on you, like the games that you mentioned that you played as a kid?
Mm. Yeah, like despite the games that I already mentioned, I think one of the game changers for me was Metal Gear Solid, and I think the third one was the had the biggest impact, because I didn't know that the game can be so cinematic, and so well done on the gameplay department at the same side. And it also has kind of like this pop culture sentiments I really vibe with. So that was very influential game for me. It was really well polished. Yeah. So yeah, I think the Snake Eater, the third installment of Metal Gear Solid, was very influential one. But like, if we're talking like in a broader perspective, are there any like must-have games for like game designers to play? I think you need to be project specific, and I think that's also like a very important thing game designer must know, is actually you need to know where to look, and that's how you kind of create your research upon. So if I want to make a boomer shooter, probably Doom Eternal is like or like Doom 2016 is like the best, the recent most polished example of that. Like if I want to make open world game, I need to look at the Rockstar games, because they have so many people working on that, and there's so many tech and design put into it, and it's so polished that you can take so many inspirations from that, and just look at the project you're currently working on and pick the proper game and a similar genre. So I think that's very important.
But since you are a senior game designer, like, are you in any ways involved in, hiring new team members, specifically hiring new game designers?
um, like I wasn't present during any recent hirings, but I was not present during the interviews, but actually I was evaluating recruitment tasks, uh, especially like technical ones. So yeah, I was part of that.
Okay, cool. And, okay, cool. Can we talk about that a bit? Because like I'm honestly like interested, like to hear your perspective on, like on what are like the most, like common mistakes that, that game designers, like do, like what are like the deal breakers, there. What are like some good practices that one can incorporate when preparing themselves, for the technical task
Yeah,
or for the interviewing process?
I think the biggest offense is actually doing a tutorial project, like from a YouTube tutorial or whatever, and just not altering it and just presenting it at your project that you wanna, like this part of your portfolio. That's because when you evaluate x amount of projects, you all know all these tutorials, so there are not so many like Arkanoid clones tutorials on YouTube, so you can actually watch few and you see that the person actually did nothing, just copy the tutorial. It's important to do tutorials for your own sake, for learning, but presenting it at your own project, it's not a good idea. So yeah, one should be aware that there needs to be, especially from a designer, you require some creative input. So I think it's there's nothing wrong in taking a tutorial from the internet, but you need to alter it, create like a twist around it. That's very important. So yeah.
Okay. Any other red flags in the, in the technical tasks or interviews?
um like in the resumes, because like, yeah, as a team we're like sometimes looking at the resumes as well. uh like maybe it's not a red flag, but like it was kind of very oftenly, we were kind of baffled by, um for example, you had a software and you just have a scale from 1 to 5, and like I know Unreal Engine in the scale from 2 to 5, and what does it mean? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything. The only quantifier of your experience and your skills are the project that you worked on. You can I can write in my CV that I know blueprints in Unreal, but what does it mean? What does it mean to know blueprints? Like watching, like I can watch few tutorials and I can say that I know blueprints to some extent, but actually only the real quantifiers are the finished project. So like don't write that I know Photoshop in the scale from 4 to 5, but because it doesn't mean anything, especially during the
Oh,
recruitment.
I must agree. So, like whoever is watching this, like please put it out of your portfolio,
Yeah.
your CV, sorry. Okay. But but how can one work around the fact that maybe they are not able, that they're not able to show their projects because of like the NDA? So how do you show off your skills if you are not able to show the project?
Yeah, I know that's an issue. That's a problem, especially when the game was not released. I don't think there's you can maybe before you recruit to the company, maybe you can agree upon that you can share some of the work, but I must say that it's probably not possible. Like if the project is not released, yeah, and you're, for example, an artist, it's gonna be really hard to actually work around this. You probably need to make, you know, uh, you need to finish projects. That's one advice. And probably you need to do something in your own time, and have a portfolio to prove it. But yeah, finish projects. Finish projects.
Okay. Okay. So finished projects. Um, okay, cool. Looking back at these, like 6 release projects and, God knows how many projects that are, that are left in the drawer somewhere. Um, is there like anything that you wished you had done differently regarding your game design decisions? You know?
Yeah, it's I would say, because it's very important to know that, like, I was talking previously about finishing the projects, but like the truth is that, like, the game is not like, it's, yeah, I know it's kind of far-fetched, but like the games are not finished. We kind of abandon them during the development, and they are more polished or less polished, but you kind of abandon them. You need to release them because money, publisher wants it released, and yeah, and other stuff. Um, so like when the game is released, I very often, say, I watch someone playing on YouTube, and I say, oh my god, why did I do this? Because player is stuck somewhere, or the game is hard in some places. But so yeah, there are there are always things that you will regret, and that's the way you need to live as a game designer. Games are not perfect, like nothing's perfect, and you just need to live with it, and you shouldn't be ashamed of yourself, because usually you did like the best you could at that time, at that place, and yeah, so you probably have some regrets, but yeah, like, if you're a game designer, know that you're not alone.
Okay, that actually sounds like a great piece of advice, like to any, yeah, to yeah, just like to any game designers out there or people in general.
Yeah,
Okay, so Bartosz, thank you so much for being our guest here today. It was really a pleasure to chat with you and to get to know you better. And I'm sure many of us will be inspired to take a deeper look into the French games industry and their graphic novel scene.
yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. It was a great chat.
Awesome. Thanks a lot and talk to you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.